Okay, Mastermind with Neil Schwartz and the great agent from Utah, Mr. Cody. How are you doing, sir, today?
I'm good, Neil. Thank you. How
All
about
right.
you?
I'm doing fabulous now that I'm talking to you.
Well, now you're making me blush.
I know, but somebody's got to, right? John's
Yeah.
certainly not going to do it, is he?
No. John would never do that.
Exactly. Um, Cody works for one of the guys I've been masterminding with for, oh my gosh, 25 years, 30 years or so. Great broker. Very similar sister operation, a little smaller than ours. But Cody, why don't you give us a little Reader's Digest version of how you got started in this business? It's a little unique. Most of our, as a dad, and certainly my wife would much rather have a doctor in the family than a real estate agent. So tell us the story.
Yeah, and I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me, Neil. But yeah, so essentially how it all started was I served a service mission for my church when I was 19, came home when I was 21, met my wife, which happens to be John's daughter. I met my beautiful wife, and she told me, she said, I will never marry a real estate agent. I grew up with it. I don't want anything to do with it. And at the time I wasn't, super interested in real estate. In fact, I wasn't interested at all. The goal was to become a doctor. So John invited me to a Mike Ferry retreat in 2015, one of the superstar retreats in Las Vegas. And I remember going there. I mean, watching all the people that we all know, Neil, Hal Swayze, Neil Weichel, a bunch of these other guys that got on stage.
Karen Bernardi.
Karen Bernardi was up there. Obviously all the big time Mike Ferry guys and gals that sold real estate. And I just could not believe the amount of money that those guys were making selling homes. And so I remember coming home and telling my wife that I wanted to get into real estate. And I remember the look she gave me, I still to this day can remember exactly how she looked at me, but she's been all on board since. So I got licensed in 2016 and really just dove headfirst into the Mike Ferry system as far as prospecting, working on my skills, working on my presentation, my objection handling, and just hit the ground running, and obviously have been going ever since. So that was my start. Originally wanted to be a doctor to now selling real estate.
How long were you down the process of going to become a doctor?
I just was in my preliminary schooling. So I left on that service mission 6 months after I graduated. So I just worked. So I had no college schooling prior to leaving. And then when I came home, I had started schooling, was in my first semester. And so I was probably 6 to 7 months in before I decided to change directions.
With still 7 years ahead of you?
What's funny is I just have a friend that just barely graduated med school that's going to be an orthopedic surgeon. So
and he started about the same. Sorry, go ahead.
I just say he started the same time I did as far as schooling.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how much money does it cost to be an orthopedic surgeon training wise?
So fortunately I have a couple, close family friends that are orthopedic surgeons. And one of them told me he was close, a little over $1 million in debt by the time he finished with schooling, between schooling and then his residency. And my buddy that just graduated is making $65,000 his first year of residency a year, being an orthopedic surgeon.
And he'll get this in 1 year, or
he gets that in one
paid monthly, or how's that work?
So he gets paid monthly, obviously. So he's got 4 years of residency before he can even be a practicing doctor on his own. So, and even then, this is what's crazy is he told me where he's located as far as living. He'll make about $450,000 his first year out of school. So
That'll be
that was
great.
the big thing. Yeah, I mean, that'll be good for him, right? But think of all the debt he has. And that was the big thing for me going to this Mike Ferry event was these guys are making $2 and $3 and $4 million a year selling real estate, and they have, no school debt, right? I'd be lucky in my market to make probably 700,000 on the high end in orthopedics. And in real estate, really the sky is the limit.
Right.
So.
Right. So what'd you make your first year selling houses in Utah or a particular area of Utah?
Yeah. So I'm just south of Salt Lake. First year I made, I believe it was like just over 250,000 my first year. I sold 29 homes. So that was my first year. And then obviously every year we've incrementally grown. So, but yeah, it was my first year, 250. I think I was 22 when I made 250 as well.
Fantastic. Was your wife okay then? Where she was good? She liked it?
Yeah, she's been happy ever since.
Okay,
she realizes it was the right move.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your goal for this year?
So transaction count wise, personally, my personal production's 80. And then I have a pretty productive buyer's agent that will probably do, between 20 and 25 deals. So as a team, we'll be over 100. Income to me, my average commission check's just a little over 10 grand. So I'll probably be between 8 and 900,000
for you.
Income. Mm-hmm.
Right. Got it. What's your biggest year?
Last year was my biggest year I've had so far, income wise. This year will be bigger, but my transaction count will be less. So my volume has been a lot bigger. I've put a big emphasis on a higher price point. So.
Good for you. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So Cody, you kind of feel a little laid back in what you're doing. You're not, doesn't feel hard charging. This just came naturally to you. You must have, you had a couple of years of selling the religion. I don't know if that's appropriate or proper way of saying it, but you were selling, right?
I was knocking doors in Mexico.
You were knocking doors in Mexico. Did you speak Spanish?
Yep. I speak Spanish and I learned Spanish while I was there.
Did you speak Spanish before you went?
No, I knew baño, hombre, agua, just the basics.
How do you sell the concept of theology and saving a soul, et cetera, and not know the language? How does that work?
Well, that's the interesting part is I paid for my mission to go. I mean, a lot of times, missionaries don't have to. The church will support them, but obviously I chose to support myself in doing it. So I took it very seriously. I took learning the language very seriously. I diligently studied the language. So by 4 months, I mean, I was I could pretty much get around and was pretty fluent by 4 months living in Mexico full time. By 18 months, I mean, outside of the fact that, I had a little bit of an American accent. A lot of people questioned if I was from there. So, it took a lot of hard work and time to understand. And then once I had the ability to communicate what I believe, to the core, that was, ultimately what changed everything was learning the language and then being able to convey the conviction I had in what I believe.
So you had the right attitude.
Yep.
You were approaching it in the proper way.
100%.
You were learning the scripts.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. And And you did a lot of door knocking?
Yeah, I mean, we literally were proselyting, is what they call it. We'd study for 2 hours in the morning, start at 7, be done by 9, and then we were out in the streets, meeting people, knocking on doors, until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, with a maybe a half hour to an hour lunch.
What a great training ground for fabulous real estate agents.
It was a great training ground. I agree with that.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. And I don't know the answer to this. So, did you, by standards of the church, were you successful? And was there a lot of wins to keep you going, or you had to work on your mindset all the time?
It was really hard. I mean, I was young. I was 19, never been away from my family, living in a foreign country, not a lot of money. It was, I would say by the standards, I don't want to say the church has standards for what you do as far as, how many people you help or whatever, but by all means, I do believe that I gave everything that I could. I was 100% committed to what I was doing. So, I mean, yeah, but there was a lot of, you have to be in the right mindset. And for me and my mission, it was, ultimately stepping outside of myself and really looking to help those around me. But that applies so much to what we do every day in real estate, right?
Well, it's really where I'm going here. It's where you were is where you began. And then you took that and you're making basically $800, $900, $1 million a year for 7 years. And I'm sure your cost of living isn't $1 million a year.
No,
maybe it is. I don't know.
No, not even close.
Got it. Cody, did you grow up special to do a couple of things? Number one, you took this on, not the mission, but you took this on to pay for it yourself. Is that unique or common?
It's very unique. Like I said, I'd say a majority of the people, it's the church supports them, or say family supports them. And not that I didn't have some help from my family, but yeah, it's definitely not the norm.
Why do you think you did that?
I think I could say I still do believe that what I was sharing truly can make an impact and change people's lives. And, I always tell my team members this: if you have the utmost conviction and belief that the services you provide can change people's lives, that message is conveyed through your tone, the words you use, how you communicate with them, to get them to do something, right? And that was very much the reason that I went, is I had that conviction that what I was going to be doing would change people's lives.
And you brought that into real estate.
And I've just 100% taken what I learned there, which is, hard work and just applied it to my real estate business 100%.
For you. I don't think I've ever heard anybody do something like that. That's fantastic. So the scripts and dialogues, what to say, how to say it, was very natural for you?
No. I definitely worked on that a lot. Not natural.
But you could do it in English and not Spanish. That was helpful,
yes,
right?
Yeah, that was helpful. That's very true.
Okay. So that first year, you did you do past client and sphere? Did you have a lot of people from the church that you sold houses to, or from family or sphere of influence, or did it come from expireds, for sale by owners, just listed, just sold?
Yeah, I always joke with people. I used to call myself the for sale by owner king in my market. It was maybe a little egotistical. But out of the 29 deals my first year, 28 of those were for sale by owners. And one of
Wow.
those was my grandma's house. She had passed away, so I ended up selling it for my grandma's estate. So 28 self-generated, one came from family.
So what script did you use?
Well, the Mike, I say the Mike Ferry script, right? At first it was very much, very much, I was very disciplined to, and this was John, your good friend of my father-in-law that really instilled this in me, was how important it was to have those scripts. But I've also learned, through the years that the power of listening and really listening to ask better questions when you're prospecting and talking with, for sale by owners, expireds, whatever it is, that's really the superpower, right? I always joke, I mean, if you're really listening or if you're not listening and you're just focused on the scripts, someone could give you something that is very valuable. And then you go on and ask them another question that has nothing to do with, what they're telling you. It's just very insincere, right? And obviously, they know that you're not listening. So yes, it's very much stick to the script, but also be very good at what the people are saying, listening to what the people are saying.
Got it. And that got you 28 deals in your first year?
Yeah,
28.
I would say me being very disciplined to that was a big part of that. Now, was I perfect? No, I was not 100% heard. I'm just doing a survey of all the for sale by owners in your area. That was by all means not my approach every time, but a big majority of my time, and I would record these calls and go back and listen to them so that I can improve and become better at them.
You were calling them and then going to see them, right?
Yes, obviously
Okay.
I would call them and set the appointment, but also I was very adamant about recording my calls too, so I could have my John critique them or my Mike Ferry coach critique them and help me improve there.
Your marketplace have a good amount of for sale by owners now, or has that changed in your areas?
It went through a lull when rates kind of started to take off. It slowed. It was pretty the slowest I've ever seen it. During COVID, I mean, I was seeing probably 10 to 15 for sale by owners a day hit my market. I'd say today we probably see anywhere between maybe 5 on a bad day and probably 10 on a good day that you'll see with for sale by owners.
Got it. So you went through this training, you learned to do this. I know your father-in-law, pardon me, is a big proponent of Mike Ferry and the scripts and dialogues.
Yes.
So you can't get too far away from that. All right. But the business changed for you a little bit during COVID, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What happened?
Well, I mean, I think it's what everybody experienced, right? People were fearful, people were concerned, people had uncertainty. We went to doing a lot of virtual things, those first few months, but then kind of I don't want to say once the dust settled, but at least in my market, come June of 2020, the market absolutely went berserk. As far as what homes were selling for, the amount of inventory that we had was low. Rates were, at historic lows. So we went through that transition into just absolute craziness.
So it was easier to get a deal and close a deal then for you?
Yeah. I mean, I was joking with you before the call that, you could have been brand new to the business, walked up and knocked on a door and said, what would you sell your house? And they said, well, I would for 600. And you could tell them it would sell for 8 and it would, right? It was easy. You didn't have to try. And they were selling in, 2 to 3 days and, for well above asking, no contingencies. So yeah, it was really easy to sell at that point in time. It did not require the same effort as it is today.
So when referring to talking earlier, what you were saying today is, could you go through that again for us? Where the differences are and the trouble, or it's not trouble, but the issues you're running into getting business today and getting it closed?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably a lot of, the country is in the same position. I mean, financing's tight, to go get a conventional loan. But, in our market, we haven't, I say this, maybe I'm biased, but I don't feel like we've been hit as hard as the rest of the country as far as, pricing. I mean, our prices are really only down about 7% year over year. Our under contracts are down 20%. Our active listings is probably down similar, 20 to 25%. So that the challenge is, 25% of the market's no longer looking to do anything, right? That was my perspective. But what I've come to realize is that, there's tons of creative ways that you can still do business and have it make financial sense for all these people. So, that's been the biggest thing is getting those people to jump in when rates are, 7 and 8%. That's been the challenge, but I've been putting a huge emphasis on, the markets in my head. That's something that Mike taught me at a young age and John's taught me at a young age. If I can control my head, I can control the market. So, for me, that's been the biggest thing this year is it may be tougher, but if I can keep my head between the lines, I'm still going to be able to sell real estate at a high volume.
So what I've been watching you do, what we talked about earlier and on other calls, is that you tend to do your job every day. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I mean, I'm here every single day. I'm here to do my job, and I'm here to do my job so I can go home and see my kids. That's what's important.
Right. You end your day fairly early?
It depends on the day. I usually work later Tuesdays and Thursdays. Usually I'm home by 6 or 6:30. Mondays I'm home by 5. Wednesdays I'm home by 5, and Fridays I typically go home by 1 or 2, and I don't work the weekends.
Good for you. That's great. Fantastic. So let's talk more about keeping your head in the game. That's there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of things pulling at all of us. How do you stay in the game, Cody?
It's tough because it is everywhere, right? And the hard part is not everyone around you. I'll give you an example for myself. I've really tried to distance myself from the news, tried to distance myself from social media, tried to distance myself from the negativity. Because although maybe it doesn't affect my real estate business, it still affects your headspace, right? So, but everybody that I associate with may not have those same goals, right? So it's tough. It's really tough to separate yourself from that when not everybody else is trying to do the same thing. So for me, it's just been, how can I fuel? I mean, just like I try to feed my body to stay healthy and strong. Is what specifically do I need to feed my head every single day so that I can attack this, this changing market or whatever you want to call it with the utmost intensity and really efficiency, so that I can once again not have to sacrifice time, from my family. So, but that's been a huge focus of mine, is really just trying to control what's here.
So it sounds like a cliche, though, but you have to get enough sleep or you're going to be tired. You have to get enough exercise to keep you physically in the game, or you're going to be tired or not interested. You have to keep away from the news, which is in today's world a project in itself. Yeah. And then stay on task and do your job when business is down a little bit and off a little bit, and people are, this business is off thing. How do I survive? How do I do what needs to be done? Are you reading any books? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you talking to a group of friends? Tell me, what works for you best.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty disciplined with, I call it my meaningful morning routine. Miracle Morning, the book, The Miracle Morning, talks a lot about that, having a meaningful morning routine. So I have structure in the morning to keep my head in the right place, or attempt to keep it in the right place, but sometimes it's still hard to do that even with a meaningful morning routine. So that's huge for me, having that routine. I mean, secondly, I mentioned this to you earlier as well, Neil, that I have 2 mastermind groups that I am a part of. And I told you this, that I am by far the least, I produce the least out of all of those guys, all 10 of those guys. Well, 5 in one group, 5 in another. So all 10 of those guys. Right. So, so that's a really good thing for me. I'm always uncomfortable on mastermind calls because it's, they're always challenging my beliefs. They're challenging my business practices. They're challenging my mental practices, or what I think is right or what I think is wrong. So that's really good for me to have that support system that is constantly trying to help me grow. And we say in our groups, calling me up rather than calling me out. So that's a huge thing, is those support things there. And then obviously, when I drive, maybe you listen to music. That's great. I listen to a lot of podcasts. One of my favorites personally is Ed Milet. By far one of my absolute favorite podcasts.
Absolutely great.
Yeah, phenomenal. I'm a big proponent of how can I build a passive income to where I can retire, be financially free by the time I'm, 45 or 50. So I listen to a lot of, investment podcasts, Bigger Pockets. There's a bunch of other ones on there that I could tell you, but just things that are constantly challenging my belief system of what I think what I think I should be doing versus what I really should be doing. So
let me ask you a question. So it kind of sounds like your ego doesn't get in your way when you're with a group of guys and gals that earn more than you, have more real estate holdings than you do, have more cash than you do. I mean, do you guys share P&Ls, or this is just conversation?
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that we're doing through the month of November is there's a book that recently came out, which is called 10X is Easier Than 2X. For those of us that, have already read it or are reading it, it's a great book. It talks about, finding your superpower. It talks about getting rid of 80% of you and focusing on the 20% that's productive, just all these different ideas, right? So we're sitting down, and it's each week one of us is responsible for sharing what is our 10X, financial plan or 10X business plan. And then the rest of the panel essentially gets to pick it apart and say, here's what changes we feel you should make. So yeah, we're sharing, P&Ls, we're sharing our business plans, we're sharing our dreams, we're sharing our goals, we're sharing everything so that we can, iron sharpen iron, right? So
Right.
Really become the best version of ourselves.
Good for you. That's very exciting. And how old are you're not 40 yet, right?
No, not 40.
Good for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn it over and ask a few questions here before we get too down the road. Justin, you have a question for Cody?
I do. Excuse me while I shut my mouth full. Cody, I had watched the other video you did with Neil a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got into the office at 6 in the morning and you were listening to calls and doing role play, how did you make that time productive so that you could actually build your skills instead of, were you listening to calls, just working on objections, calling that specific person back, or what did you do during that time?
So that's something that, once again, John, my father-in-law, really helped me structure a morning routine that, was effective, right? So I'd get in at 6, I'd come in and I'd write out the scripts, right? Next thing I do is I'd listen back to any past recordings. I recorded almost every listing presentation that I went on when I first started. And so I'd go back and listen to it. Okay, where did I lose control? Okay, was I listening there? How was my tone? Right? Was I involved in the conversation, or was I just trying to get to the next question? So I'd go back and listen to that and then write it out and say, okay, here's what I could have done better. I would then role play for 15 minutes with somebody in the office or a role play partner I had from Mike Ferry. Then I'd take another 15 minutes. And this was probably the most painful one is I talk with my hands a lot, right? I'm a pretty expressive person. And so I would practice in the mirror. I would practice the scripts in the mirror. And I hated what I saw, every time. I'm like, wow, I look like an idiot. What am I doing? Like, did I make that face when I was meeting with people? Like stuff like that, right? So I just came up with, I broke it down into those 4 areas of structure so that I was getting the most out of that hour prior to me going to my brokerage script practice at 7. So having a detailed plan and stick to it, a morning routine and stick to it. That's what helped me.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think so. It seems to me, and that's why I asked you a lot of questions when we first started. It seems to me that there's something in your personality or something you learned from family that keeps you focused, that you have a plan. The fact that you paid for your own mission. I don't think I've ever heard that from anyone. I mean, maybe it happens, but that's pretty amazing to take on that responsibility. I always find it wild where you go into another country and you don't know the language and you're going to sell religion. That's a fascinating concept to me. I have trouble with just my basics, selling houses, right?
Yeah.
So where does that come from, Cody? What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like I had really good parents growing up that, taught me a lot of really good things. In this book, 10x is easier than 2x. He talks about defining what your superpower is, right? What's your super strength? And I think for me is just, I've always had, and I feel like I've identified this, that my superpower is the ability to connect with people on more than just a surface level. And so, I think that's a big part of that is, I always just try to step outside of myself and really see them where they are and try to put myself in their shoes, because when you come from their level, you can really genuinely and truly help those people. Whereas if you're coming down, you're looking down on them, immediately you're starting from the wrong place. So I feel like I was taught that, from great parents, that it's not about me. This life isn't about me. It's about giving back and helping those around us. And so I think that's a part of it, is the ability to connect with people.
Well, they've done a great job with you. Congratulations. Other questions for Cody? Raise your hands or just jump right in.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Cody, thanks for your time today. How long did it take you to develop your morning routine?
I feel like it's a great question, because I feel like I've had a few morning routines, right? I mean, the first gentleman that asked a question about, me getting into the office at 6. I mean, I did that years 1, 2, 3, and probably 4 in the business. I was at the office every morning by 6. And then as I started having kids and everything else, I mean, I don't get here at the same time, right? So I feel like my morning routine has evolved with time, but I do feel like I was taught, year 1, like I need structure in the morning. So like I said, it's still, I think it changes all the time, but I think within the first year, I was able to identify what I knew worked and what I knew didn't work. As far as my morning routine, I'd say within a year, I had a pretty good feel.
Thanks.
All right, good question, Tim. Thanks, Cody. All right, other questions for Cody? Jump in. We got to go ahead, Patty. I think I saw your hand.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Hi, Cody. Thank you very much. I have a
You're
question regarding the for sale by owners. Now, did you have like a broad area? And if you did, how did you organize the visits that you would have? Did you do it all on one day or just when they came up?
So I was probably more, and I'll clarify, and hopefully I didn't come across and saying that I visited all of them, right? But
Okay.
my intention first goal was set an appointment, right? If I couldn't set an appointment, it's somebody that was going to do something, then it was then leave follow-up, right? If I felt like, okay, maybe I could have set an appointment, or maybe I need to go knock on this door, then I'd be selective about who I knocked on, right? And I usually tried to time it around if I had another, let's say I was calling in Salt Lake, I talked to her for sale by owner, didn't get the appointment, felt like it was a great conversation. I'm going to be following up. I have a listing appointment up there. Okay, then I would go to my listing appointment and then go knock on the door and just introduce myself, right? And I have a pretty big geographical area. I mean, I'd say the furthest points of my area I work is probably within 60 minutes of the office I'll drive to. So it would be a waste of my time just to go knock on every for sale by owner, right? But I tried to be very selective about who I was knocking on, as far as the for sale by owners go. So like I said, everybody's different in their approach. For me, it was just, who did I have a really good conversation with that I was really close to getting an appointment with? I'm going to go knock on that person's door.
Okay, great.
That's kind of how I attacked it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Patty. Appreciate it. Good work, Cody. Okay. Who else has a question? Mr. Cody.
I got one.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Cody, so you were selling religion in an area where my guess is their religion is like built in their culture. It's like selling something that's probably opposite from what they were ground up to believe.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's interesting.
My guess is that probably built the callus, but when you came back to sales after that, was it just like, it's so easy compared to what I was doing? Or did you still struggle with kind of like, sometimes we have call reluctance. Sometimes we have a schedule. We don't exactly want to do it because we don't feel like, those days you don't feel like it. Just wondering if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. It's funny because I have no issue. If you talk to my father-in-law, John, if you guys ever go to a Mike Fair event, have Neil introduce you to my father-in-law, and he'll probably tell you a story about us going somewhere at the airport and me going up and talking to, random people or whoever I sit next to or whatever. Like, I don't feel like I've ever had an issue talking with people, right? Maybe where the reluctancy came in is I'm very amiable, and confrontation was like, it just tore me apart. When someone's like, screw you, go get a real job, you piece of crap, like that I would take that so personal up front. That's probably more where I struggled, was the rejection of it. Sometimes it was disrespectful, the rejection, right? When I was in Mexico, not that I didn't have disrespectful rejection, but it was, we all believe in, a higher being, right? So for me, it was like, there was some common ground there. Whereas with sometimes these for sale by owners, you just want your money and that's what they think. Right. So there's no common ground. You're the enemy. You are the devil in their eyes. So, for me, it was just, I had to callous myself to that rejection. And Mike teaches, the quicker you can move from, one no to the next no, that's the quicker you're going to get to the next yes. Right. And so that's where I think more the mission really helped me is that I knew it was a numbers game, right? I just needed to keep talking to people, and I eliminated all options when I started real estate. I cut the ties to everything. So for me, I was already at the bottom and I only had one way to go, which was up. So that put a lot of pressure on me to perform, especially with my first child being born. So I had to produce. So for me, there was no option to, I don't want to do it today, or I don't want to call that person, or you know what I mean? I had to do something. So that was a big push for me.
Thanks, Cody. That's great. But some of us, well, you had to do it. Were your parents annoyed with you for changing from medical school? What does your dad do?
So my dad is actually he teaches tennis. He's a tennis instructor. So I grew up with structure playing tennis.
Okay.
My mom worked at a physical therapy office most of my adolescence. I was the first one in my family to say I wanted to go get a college degree and that I wanted to specialize in something. So there was a lot of pushback at the beginning. Why are you getting into real estate? Why are you investing in real estate? You should be going to school. You should be getting an education. So there was definitely some pushback.
Got it. But you went through that. Plus, your wife wasn't that thrilled you were going into real estate.
No, she grew up with it. She said, my dad was in real estate my whole life. I don't want to deal with it.
Well,
I don't want to have these stupid conversations.
Her grandfather and her dad.
Yep. Everything.
Yeah. Is it, in fact, just so everybody understands the mentality, I still role play with John Haar once a week on a Wednesday morning with him and his brother, Keith.
Yeah.
So it's 50 years later, that's what we do. Like a couple of idiots. But we're really good at it.
Well, and I think that is, if I could give anybody, some advice in real estate, is that you've never arrived, right? If you can keep that mindset that I've never arrived, then sticking to the fundamentals and sticking to the basics is always going to be part of what your daily regimen or your daily schedule is, right? And I feel like that's kind of the mentality I try to have, be humble and realize there's always somebody bigger, better, faster, stronger than me, right? There's always somebody selling more real estate than me. So there's always something for me to learn.
Right. So great, Cody. Thank you for that. Okay, other questions for Cody before we wrap it up so he can go out and list some more houses or go home to the children?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joanna.
Yes.
I wanted to hear, what do you do for your follow-up conversations? I find myself also having really good conversations the first time, and they're not ready yet, to make a move in real estate, but what is your follow-up conversation with those?
Great question. And I'll follow up with a question for you. When they tell you that they're not ready, or they're, call me back in a month or call me back in 2 weeks or whatever, is that when you're calling those people back?
I call them before.
Okay. Because that's how I am. They tell me, in fact, I'll give you an example. I just listed a property last week. And the lady said, call me back in 2 months. I'm not interested. And I called her back every 2 days to check in with her. I was out hunting and, I had a deer permit to go hunt, and I'm up on the mountain, enjoying the scenery. And somehow I get self-service and I get a text from that for sale by owner. And she said, hey, we're ready to list it and we want you to do it. Right. That was 2 weeks after I had, the original conversation. So that was going to be my feedback, is if whatever they tell you, cut it way down, call them in 2 days. Right. But I think just going back to, I just actually role played this with a good friend of mine. The follow-up call is, am I calling to ask them the questions, or am I calling to understand, what it is I can truly do to help them? Right. because that's where I think I separate myself. Like I said, I feel like my superpower is being able to connect with people. I'm not worried about just asking the Mike Ferry follow-up script questions, right? Although they're great questions, I'm listening to what they're saying, and then I'm asking questions based upon what they're saying, right? So for me, I mean, no follow-up call is the same, because I feel like I really try to listen to what they're telling me, and then from there, try to provide a solution to the problem rather than just what every other agent's doing is, are you ready to list it? Are you ready to do something? Right? So I'd say that's my biggest advice to you, is really listen and come from a place of, I can help you, or I want to help you, rather than, I want to get my commission check and run.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Great stuff, Cody. Thank you so much. All right, unmute yourselves. Unmute yourselves. Let's give them a big hand. Woo! All right. Fantastic.
thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Cody, what we're
Of
going to
course.
do now is we're going to go around the room and ask what we learned today from you. You're welcome to stay and listen. And or if this is a hard stop and you've got to go on to another appointment, we certainly understand. I just want you to know this has been great as usual. It's a terrific job.
Ed.
Like I told you earlier today, you're either a warning or you are an example, and you are an spectacular example. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Neil. I'll stick around for a minute. My next appointment's not till 2:30, so my time.
All right, good stuff. Okay, so what we learned from Cody today? Come on, Junior, what'd you learn?
Hey, Cody, I like what you said about, because I mean, we hear it from every agent that Neil interviews that just come from a place of helping them, but, or at least I didn't understand. You don't really understand what that means until you have a phone call where you come from that place and you realize they stay on the phone for an extra 10 minutes than if you had just asked the questions and hung up, So I liked how you said, when you come from a place of helping people, I found that I stay on the phone longer because you start listening more, because you really don't care what questions you have to ask. Because like you said, they might ask something or they say something that the next question on the script, it won't make sense. It'll be out of place. So I like how you said that. And then just about your schedule. I mean, I try to have a structured schedule, but I found even lately, and I know I've been a little complacent, is like, I'll get here at a certain time in the office at 6:45, but I don't start practicing my role play until after the coffee's done. And, and so it's just like, so I guess I do have a question, Cody, that I didn't ask already. How do you, because you get here, you get to the office what time do you get to the office now? I know it's changed since you had kids.
Yeah, I get here at 7 every morning.
And when you walk in the office at 7, are you like practicing at 7:01, or how does that work?
Great question. So Mondays and Wednesdays at 7 o'clock, I'm in the brokerage script practice participating and role playing, right? Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays is where I have structured role plays with, mastermind group friends or Mike Ferry agents that I'm close with, where we're deliberate. See, that's the thing about real estate is if you just practice the scripts, there's no deliberate practice there, right? I'm a big sports guy. So if you're a sports person, one of my favorite athletes is Stephen Curry. Watch how Stephen Curry practices. Is he just out there just like throwing the ball around, dribbling a couple times? No, he is very deliberate about what he practices, right? And John Wooden, one of the most successful basketball coaches in the history of basketball, says you practice harder in practice so that the game you're more prepared for the game, right? So the more deliberate you can get with that practice in the morning will make those role plays, that much more successful, or that you get more out of it, right? But for me, it's the big thing is those days I don't have brokerage script practice, because that's a form of accountability. I told my broker I'll be here, right? So for me, I'm there because that's my accountability, right? Those other days is I have accountability to be here at a certain time, and I have accountability because I told someone I'd be on the call at a certain time to practice with them. So for me, it's just a certain level of accountability that I know I need to follow through with.
So Cody, if you were previewing 5 houses a day, 5 days a week, and you said you were going to do that, would you probably do that?
I would. I
You
would
would.
100% do that. And
Mhm.
John, my father-in-law, my broker, will say if there's not $1,000 attached to it, then it's not a real accountability. So, for me, it's there's always something that's going to push me to get out there and do it, because there's going to be days you don't want to.
Right.
And then
I
Cody,
wanna
one
go
more
drink
question.
coffee and yeah, go ahead.
You said you record yourself when you talk to people. I do the same thing. And then I just started listening to them. I'd send them to my coach, but I realized I'm letting her listen to them, but I'm not listening to them myself. So I started listening to them.
Mhm.
But is there do you have a notepad and you take notes on the call and say, or do you just kind of mentally note it and then you have that mental note for your next time you talk to someone? You know what I mean? Do you take notes on the call you're listening to? Okay, slow down, stuff like that.
Yep. So actually, I have a critique form that I was given that has it's guided questions. As I'm listening to the recording, I'm filling out those questions, right? So for those of you, if you would be interested, I'd be happy to share what that critique form is. That helps me get more out of it than just mentally listening to it.
Please.
Okay,
that'd be
I'm
great.
gonna ask you for that. Yeah, please.
Yeah, if you could send it to me, I'll post it in the chat. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
That
That's
sounds
great.
I'd
Good
be happy to do that.
questions, Junior. All right, what else did we learn? What else did we learn? Raise your hands. Come on, let's go.
The
Now,
follow-up questions don't necessarily have to be the questions that are scripted, but it is really important to show the client that you are, or the questions you ask, show them that you're actually caring and listening to what their goals are. I think that's important. I've never went down that road, but yeah.
And if I can add something, Neil, something that if you're not doing, I feel like is really helpful with the follow-up call too, is how good of notes do you take when you talk to these people, right? I mean, just think of it this way. You're calling someone that you don't even know from Adam, right? And you're saying, listen here, I'm the #1 agent. I sell so much real estate. I solve all your problems. You're going to pay me a 6% commission and you're going to like it, right? Like I said, they immediately think you're the enemy because they don't want anything to do with you, right? But when I do a follow-up call and I say, Mr. Seller, you mentioned that you were moving here because of this reason. Is that still important to you, right? Or you mentioned, I need to sell the home in this period of time, or else I'm not going to be able to purchase the next home. Is that still important to you? When you have good notes, the follow-up call is a totally different call, right? So, and once again, that goes back to, am I listening and am I making, notes of what they're saying so that the call is more productive when I call them the next time? Because no other agent is going to do that. I always joke with people. I know that I'm going to list it for sale by owner when they pick up the phone and they say, hello, Cody, how are you? That means I've made a difference. I have separated myself from 99% of the other agents that are calling them. So get to where these people know you when you call, rather than say, what do you want? I already told you to stop calling me, right? So,
Cody, another thing, you speak with so much conviction. I mean, when you first got on the interview, your smile, I was like, man, I want to talk to this guy. Let me interview him, So, I mean, you also made me realize, I mean, if you're making an impact on another real estate agent, imagine how you are with the client who you've never talked to before, So thank you for that, because you showed through your smile, you don't even know it, that you do care, and you are looking out for the interest even of the other agents on the call. So it's awesome.
well, that's great. It's good observation. And Cody said his superpower is connecting with people. So, and part of that is his smile. Well, there you go. Good job.
Cody,
Go ahead.
I was going to ask Cody something.
Go ahead, Angel.
What's the name of that podcast? I didn't get the name.
I have a couple.
Ed something? Ed Lempy? Something like that?
Ed Milet. In fact,
Ed?
I'll put it in the chat box.
Milet. And the other thing I'll ask you, if you do you have any point on connecting with folks, homeowners, for somebody really new? And I'm thinking about previewing some homes that I seen just driving by my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it's a little intimidating because they're really upscale and I'm nervous a little bit. So do you have any pointers?
I think kind of what Neil said at the beginning, it's all about your attitude, your approach and expectation, right? Here's the thing too. This is something I did do on the phones to kind of overcome that rejection or whatever. These people don't know me. I don't know them, right? But if I'm listening to them and I'm asking good questions, I can get to know them and they can get to know me, right? So once again, I just try to come from an angle of, can I help you or can I not help you? And if I can't, that's okay. Move on to the next one, right? So I think that would be my biggest pointer is that when you're intimidated, is you're thinking about yourself, right? You're fearful of how these people will perceive you. Am I dressed okay? Is my hair okay? You know, whatever, right? Are my pants wrinkly? When in all reality,
I was thinking suit or casual.
yeah. So
You're breaking
you
up,
gotta
Angel.
remember-
What'd you say?
Oh yeah, you hit it on the head. I was thinking either a suit or casual. Like, that was another thing. I was like, I don't know if I should be wearing a suit in this neighborhood or go casual.
So Cody, can I take this?
Yes, of course.
So Angel, you want to go in and learn about a higher price property area? Start previewing the properties. Don't door knock. Don't phone
Okay.
canvas. Just preview the properties. Go see 15 properties that are for sale in the general area. Set appointments, go see them. A, B. I would suggest a coat and tie, but that's where I come from, okay? I want to always look professional coming in the door. You can always dress down. You can never dress up when you've made that first impression, okay?
Right.
You know, if you're in a situation and you go in and you have a tie and nobody else has a tie on and you're sitting in this meeting, you take the tie off or you take your coat off and wear the tie. But you if you need a suit, then what you do is go out and buy 1 or 2 suits and, go to CNR Clothiers or one of those guys and they'll fix you up nice. It's not going to last 10 years. But they'll fix you up nice, and then you only wear that suit like it's a suit of armor on the day you go to battle. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I mean, when I started in this business, I didn't have any money. I didn't have suits. I didn't have any of this kind of stuff. I bought 1 or 2 suits. I bought only white shirts because white shirts go with everything.
That's right.
And that's how I did it, man. And
Neil,
time would go on. Go ahead. Who's talking?
No, that was me, Neil. If I call in, when I call in, not if, but when I called to ask for the preview, and they asked me, "Well, do you even have a buyer?" And I don't. Can I? Would it be okay?
They did.
To
No.
say, like,
Here's the way you answer that. Okay. Absolutely. But the truth is, I won't know my buyer has any interest in your house until I see it. Well, I only want you to bring the buyer. No, I don't do business that way. I see every house before I schlep my buyer in the car. And I'll tell you why. Okay, this is not to take control only. Sometimes you get a buyer that says to you, never show me a house with power lines behind it. Cody, you ever have anything like that?
Yep.
Yeah. Never show me a house with power lines. Well, let me tell you, or let me ask you, has there ever been a listing agent, except somebody that doesn't know better, to put one of the pictures in the listing of the power lines that are behind the house? Cody, would any agent do that?
No.
No. They would never do it. So you're going to look at all the houses and you're going to see no power lines and you're going to say, no problem. I'm going to go show that house. You pull up with the client in that house. There's the power lines. They've just fired you. Okay. They've just fired you. You have to preview property. I'm as passionate as on that as anything else I can talk about. Cody, any comments on what I talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book which is by John Maxwell right now, which is I think it's the 16 Laws of Communication.
Correct.
And
Brand
he
new
talks
book.
about brand new book, and he talks about how, most people form an impression of you within, he says, 7 seconds of you meeting them, right? I've heard 30 seconds of you meeting them, but it doesn't matter. You have a very short window to either convince them that you are a professional or that you're like the other 90% of the real estate agents that show up in flip-flops, right? So, I mean, if you looked at me today, and sorry if I offended you if you have flip-flops on, but I'm dressed in a suit. I have my tie on, my white shirt, I've got dress slacks, and I've got night dress shoes. That's how I dress every single day. Doesn't matter if I have an appointment or if I don't, right? So, but I also believe, Mike teaches you upgrade your way of living because that'll force you to produce more, right? How you dress yourself is how you perceive yourself.
Right.
If
100%.
you dress yourself as a professional, then you're going to perceive yourself as a professional, and that's how the public will see it too. So, big thing. I'd say this is just my standard. I don't, unless it's Friday and I'm leaving at noon, going on a vacation, maybe I'll wear some, a polo shirt or a regular shirt, whatever. But most of the other days, this is how I dress. It's just, once again, it's just who I am.
Angel, did that help a little bit?
Thank you.
You're breaking up, buddy.
I said thank you. Both of you did.
Okay. Good. All right. Okay. Unmute yourselves. Let's give him a really big hand. Woo!
Yeah. Way to go, Cody. Way to go,
Thanks
Neil.
so much.
Great job, Cody. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Excellent. I give flying
Well,
colors your father-in-law.
Well, thanks. I got to hop off for my appointment, but
All
make
right,
it a
buddy.
great
You
day,
take
guys. If
care.
need
Thank you
anything-
again.
Hey, yeah. See ya.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Ashley's telling me to turn off the recorder. Stop recording.